right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. Ruiz, what do you got? What lesson did you learn in Week 10?
So I was going to come on here and say, like, Kansas City can't keep getting away with this, but like everything in me tells me, yes, they can. And they're probably going to get away with this, and they're probably going to win a Super Bowl. I'm talking about them escaping Arrowhead with a win in a game where they were outgained by the Broncos. The Broncos had a higher EPA. They had a higher success rate. They had a higher EPA in the passing game, a higher EPA in the run game, a higher success rate in the pass game, a higher success rate in the run game. They dominated this game. They should have won this game. But the Chiefs somehow, some way, they pull the win out. They get a block kick at the end. But this game really came down to what it's come down to all year for the Chiefs. The defense has played well, and Patrick Mahomes is magic on third down. But when you look at their splits on offense by down, that's where you get the real concern here, because they're not a bottom 10 offense on first and second down, but a mediocre offense on first and second down. And they are the best offense in the NFL by EPA and success rate and any metric you want to look at. That's typically when they've had most of their production on offense. I think once that luck starts to turn, and we saw it turn a little bit in this game against Denver, although Mahomes had a couple of third and extra long conversions that really helped Kansas City pull this one out. But once that luck starts to turn and they can't improve on first and second down, I think we're going to see a couple of losses. And I wouldn't be surprised if this season turns into a little bit of the 2023 Eagles season that we saw last year, where they start, what did they start? 10-0, 9-0, whatever it was. And then by the end of December, it felt like they were going to lose the first playoff game they played, and that's what happened. I don't think it's going to get that bad because Mahomes and Reed are still here, but when you account for the fact that they're going to be in the AFC and playing against teams like Baltimore, Buffalo, even Houston can rebound, Cincinnati still has a chance to be a threat in the playoffs, I think the bar is a little bit higher than that 2023 Eagles team last year.
Well, the funny thing to me, right, is that even though they've been winning these games in similar fashions, I don't think that we can just copy and paste the same analysis from past weeks where they kind of stumbled around and then pulled one out in the end to what we've been seeing over maybe the last 2 to 3 games. I thought that, when you think about when they beat the Saints and when they beat the 49ers, they were able to do that because they could rely on the run game whenever they got the light boxes, when teams wanted to play more man, and they were able to play behind that offensive line and try to mitigate asking Patrick Mahomes to be Superman on third and medium, third and long, third and extra long. What I feel like we've seen over the last 3 weeks is just less and less effectiveness in the run game, more teams that are just willing to load up the box on early downs and try to get them into those 2nd and 9s, those 3rd and 8s a little bit more often. And while I think things have played out fine because you have maybe the best quarterback to ever live behind there, you can just feel the constraint on this offense as every week goes by. So I'm with Steven. I think that in this game, them not having big turnover problems is ultimately what allowed them, I think, to hang around longer than what they would have in other situations when Patrick Mahomes was giving the ball away, it felt like weekly to a defensive lineman, or some disaster play was happening in the run game with the fumble. But to me, I think the more that I'm watching this team, the less confident I feel. So I might be going in the opposite direction as Ruiz, where just like, as I'm watching that Broncos game, it just feels so certain to me that like, oh, these wide receivers really don't have an answer against any coverage picture that they see. And you saw on third down, Denver didn't really have to blitz them to get pressure in this game. It just came down to Patrick Mahomes shaking pass rushers off on 3rd and 13s and then lofting the ball to Travis Kelce or DeAndre Hopkins to move the chains. I just don't like living that way as a team that is chasing its 3rd Super Bowl. And while I know I'm an idiot for not feeling good about the team with Patrick Mahomes, I can't ignore everything that I've learned about watching the NFL in my lifetime and say that everything is fine when we know that there are plenty of warning marks and yellow flags and orange flags with this team right now.
See, that's why that's the only thing that's holding me back from writing this team off, is because I know how this is going to end. I know Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to figure it out. And I don't want to be the guy that's in the montage when they're winning the Super Bowl with all the media clips being like, oh, they're done this time. It's going to be Diante now. Don't make the same mistake, Sheil.
I think it's a classic, like, 2 things can be true scenario. Yeah. I think the concern is validated. I mean, based on offensive success rate, this was their worst performance of the entire season. And a lot of that has to do with what Diante is saying. They couldn't run the ball. They averaged 3 yards per carry in this game, and everything has to be so methodical. They are producing an explosive play at the 5th lowest rate in the NFL. Can I tell you a team that produces explosive plays at a higher rate than the Kansas City Chiefs? The Chicago Bears, so don't worry, we're going to get to them. The Chicago Bears produce explosive plays at a higher rate than the Kansas City Chiefs in the year 2024. How is that possible? So I think it's okay to say there are concerns about this team. They are 9-0, but they are 7-0 in one-score games. Usually, you're not able to do that. Maybe with Patrick Mahomes, you're able to do that. But then I say the other part, that which Ruiz, you started with it, like, so what? They should be like a 7-2 team? That's pretty good coming off a Super Bowl victory when you had questions coming into the season at offensive tackle, when you had a wide receiver go down, when you faced the sixth hardest schedule in the NFL. Like 7-2 is still pretty good here. So I have concerns about them going forward, but I mean, this schedule is wild. Like, yes, they have the Bills next week. They've got the Browns on the schedule. They've got the Raiders on the schedule. They've got the Panthers on the schedule, and they've already won 9 games. So, like, let's say they lose every other game. You're talking about a 12-5 team who very well might still be the 1 seed. That's almost like the worst case scenario with this team. And let me ask you this. Most likely team to get to the Super Bowl from the AFC. Your life depends on it. Right now, who are you picking?
I'm picking Baltimore. I was about to ask you a similar question, like on a neutral field.
I'm picking the Chiefs.
You're picking Kansas City
in the playoffs, especially in these playoffs where they're going to be playing at home against a team like the Ravens. If they face the Ravens, I'm picking the Chiefs. The Chiefs could still win in a lot of different ways. Like, their offense isn't as good, but they're probably still the most balanced team in the AFC. Their defense is way better than the Ravens, and I trust them on special teams. But Diante, you didn't answer. What do you got?
It's Baltimore. It's Baltimore to me if we're talking neutral field. If we're talking about Kansas City getting home field throughout, I mean,
I'll take that. You think Mahomes is scared of a neutral field? What are you two talking about, neutral field?
Look, it's not even, to me, it's not even that there's anything wrong with Patrick Mahomes. Like, if anything, like, the fact that I am not just dismissing this case outright is the biggest, bow at the feet of Patrick Mahomes there is. They have a 54% success rate on 3rd and 10 or more dropbacks. That's insane.
It's not
that can't last. Literally, it just can't last. The league has taught us that that's not going to last. And that's not to say that when they're not converting these 3rd and extra longs at a ridiculous clip that everything's going to fall apart. But it is just another marker in terms of when things go wrong, the margin for error is not actually as great as I think their record suggests. I think that we're able to walk away from the result of these games and just say, oh man, Patrick Mahomes fixes all the problems. The truth of the matter is that Denver did outplay this football team. Like I said, this wasn't the San Francisco game. This wasn't the New Orleans game where Kansas City looked like the more talented team from snap one throughout, and they made mistakes along the way that allowed their opponent to hang around. This was them being outplayed, especially by Denver's defense, and they just happened to block a kick at the end. And that's not to say if Denver makes the kick at the end of the game that we're coming in and saying, aha, they've been exposed. Everything is going, everything is crumbling for this team, and we can finally be honest about where Kansas City is. That's not what I'm saying, but I think that them not having that loss this Sunday, I think just paints over once again some of the things that have gone wrong with this offense. And I am just concerned when you see Buffalo, when you see Baltimore again, assuming that they do see them in the postseason, that those are going to be the kinds of teams that can keep pace with them when they are playing at their best. And maybe the high variance that they've been living off of Patrick Mahomes goes in another direction.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it feels a little Eagles coded to me this year. It's because, if you go back to September of the Eagles season, they had problems, like Sheil was saying, but they were still a good football team. And if you gave them neutral luck, they'd probably be 8-2 instead of 10-0. But no, those problems fester and they get worse. And the run game point that Diante brought up, I think is a very good point. This game, their pass rate was 75.4. That was not only the highest of their season, it was the highest of the season across the NFL. This was not a game that they were trailing in for most of the game. I know they were down.
How often they pass on early downs, you're saying?
No, not even early downs, just in total.
Overall.
Yeah, 75.4 of their plays were pass plays. I mean, I know they were down by double digits early on, but it wasn't a game where they were playing catch up, so to speak. They were, the Broncos scored 14 points the entire game. And I just think that playmaking burden is just going to just buckle Patrick Mahomes eventually. He's not, like Diante said, he's not going to be able to keep completing these passes on 3rd and 10. And you mentioned the numbers. Yes, the offensive numbers overall do look good, but that's almost entirely based on 3rd down. You said only 5 teams have a lower explosive play rate than them. If you go on 1st and 2nd down, no team has a low. They have the worst explosive play rate in the NFL. They are 18th in EPA. They are 10th in success rate. That's good, but it's not great. It's not going to sustain your offense. We've seen high success rate offenses fail in the NFL. You have to generate explosives, and they just aren't outside of Patrick Mahomes' magic on third down. That's why I'm concerned. I'm also less concerned because it is Patrick Mahomes, and maybe he will just keep this up for the next 4 months or whatever.
Yeah, I share. I think the concerns are valid, and there's also still no team I would take over them. In the Matt Patricia ain't walking through that door, with the 2023 Eagles. They still got Spags. Like, what's more likely? Spags and the Chiefs defense slows down the Ravens offense, or that Ravens defense is able to stifle the Chiefs offense?
I would say the former is more likely, but I think if we're looking at that week 1 game, the issue wasn't that Spags shut down that offense.
Yeah.
And that to me is the biggest concern. So I think that now really what this season has done has almost given us a very narrow focus on what next week is going to look like when they play Buffalo. Because if it looks similar to the Ravens game where the Bills are able to march the ball up and down the field, even if Kansas City does get that one play or those 3 plays they need late in the game to win, I'm probably going to come out of that game wondering whether or not I still trust this team to go win those games in the postseason. Obviously just setting aside the fact that means they're probably going to get home field advantage throughout. I need to see them really give me something emphatic. And this is not a Styles points thing as much as I want to see the recipe that we know to win Super Bowls show up and be present for the Chiefs when they're playing these games on a weekly basis.
Yeah, they're not a juggernaut. I mean, Bills are in the mix. Ravens are in the mix, like you guys mentioned. I just saw Chiefs are underdogs in that game. Oh no! Add this to the underdogs. Good. Hello, classic Mahomes performance.
Make it a pick next week. You can get plus odds in the pick segment next week.
Already? No, I need all the help I got. Yeah, I probably should start making them on Sunday night. Something. I need some help in our picks contest. All right.